this is currently what is being seen. Yeah, it's without purchasing another $500 camera. To remove the something we call white balance, we need to, but you can't adjust it with this camera.
It's symbolic.
I'm actually thinking, you know what, let's just transition it in. It's a live event. Whoever's watching this is aware that timing and synchronizing is not going to be perfect. Transition it in. Get the other camera ready. We're listening, we're watching, it's timing. It's about 20 seconds. So the delay is about 20 seconds. Do some transitions if you want.
Can I get a photo of the media?
Somebody get on the camera. Just at least holding the.
Thank you.
Oh, we're about to start. So I would leave it.
This is the one that's actually being shown.
Seeing as this is our first proper live stream, we don't have I would definitely get a nice close frame shot of this piece. Closer.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our Remembrance Day ceremony. Today we come together as one to recognize all of those who participated in international conflict on behalf of Canada and those who died in service to their country. Through the many hardships Canadians had to endure, we were able to gain strength and freedom. Women and men sacrificed their lives, health, and families to provide service and protection for our country.
They left their homes and families behind to travel into unfamiliar territory. We commemorate and salute those who shaped Canada into the country it is today and who helped mold our future for tomorrow. On November 11, 1918, at 11 a.m., the German army agreed to a ceasefire. This brought the First World War to an end after 4 long, treacherous years, and is why we keep November 11th as an important day to remember and reflect.
This year marks the 100th anniversary of the Battle of Passchendaele. After their victory at Vimy Ridge, which also celebrated its 100th anniversary this past spring, Canadians were seen as a capable and united force that was not to be trifled with. With their newly gained reputation, Canadian men were sent to the front lines to fight and gain this territory back from the German army. The town of Passchendaele had been severely damaged due to explosives, and the conditions were muddy and wet. As a result, over 15,000 Canadians died in the battle, either being attacked by the enemy or drowning in the mud. After Passchendaele, our reputation for having the best offensive fighting line on the Western Front only grew.
We are lucky enough to have 2 speakers join us today, Sergeant Elizabeth Rawlinson and Major Matt Lennox. Sergeant Elizabeth Rawlinson was born and raised in Stratford, Ontario. In 2005, she moved to Pembroke, Ontario, and joined the 42nd Field Regiment as a part-time resource management support clerk. She decided in 2007 to transfer to the full-time regular force and was posted to the Royal Canadian Dragoons in Petawawa, Ontario. In September 2008, she deployed to Afghanistan as a clerk for the Operational Mentor Liaison Team.
Their main focus was to teach members of the Afghan National Army and the Afghan National Police. In 2012, Sergeant Rawlinson was posted to 427 Special Operations Aviation Squadron for a year, and then moved to the Canadian Special Operations Regiment for 4 years. Since then, she joined the Queen's York Rangers, a Toronto-based Army Reserve unit, as the chief clerk. Major Matt Lennox grew up in Orillia, Ontario. In 2002, while attending university, he joined the Queen's York Rangers, a Toronto-based Army Reserve unit. In May 2008, he deployed to Afghanistan as a duty officer with the Canadian Task Force headquarters. While in Afghanistan, he served as a battle adjutant to the Task Force deputy commander, as well as a liaison officer to a U.S. Special Forces battalion. On returning safely to Canada in early 2009, Major Lennox continued training with the Queen's York Rangers.
He has served as a battle captain, regimental operations officer, and most recently as a squadron commander. Major Lennox is currently Deputy Commanding Officer of the Queen's York Rangers. The Queen's York Rangers train on Wednesday nights and 1 weekend a month. They have sent soldiers to every conflict Canada has been involved in since the War of 1812. Most recently, their soldiers have deployed to Afghanistan, Eastern Europe, and Iraq. Please welcome them both.
Good morning, and thank you for inviting me back for your Remembrance Day ceremony. It is an honor to be speaking here with you today. As I was introduced, I'm Sergeant Liz Rawlinson, and I'd like to begin by telling you a little bit about myself. So I'm a full-time regular force human resources administrator with the Canadian Forces, and I'm going to talk a little bit about my time in Petawawa. So Garrison Petawawa started off as a camp when it was built in 1905. When the government purchased the land off of from German settlers. Once built, Camp Petawawa started to train Canada's troops. It also served as an internment camp for prisoners of war from both World War I and II. Today, there's about 5,100 soldiers stationed there in about 12 different units. After being in the reserve force for a while, I decided I wanted to make a career out of it, so in October of 2007, I joined the full-time regular force. And fortunately, I didn't have to move, and I was posted to the Royal Canadian Dragoons in Petawawa. So the majority of that unit is made up of full-time soldiers, and this means that the people who work there are on a contract with the military, and it's their full-time job. So some of the contracts are as short as 3 years, or they could be as long as 20 years. The RCD have a long history with Canada. Back in 1883, they first started out as a cavalry school corps based out of Quebec City. Because tanks were invented back then until 1916, the RCD were responsible for training horses to help them with their jobs. Eventually, the RCD were relocated to Petawawa. In World War I, they were recognized for their efforts in 15 separate places, and in World War II, 10 different places. More recently, they have also been recognized for their efforts in Afghanistan. So after spending about 11 years up in Petawawa, I was stationed in Toronto with the Queen's York Rangers. And this unit's a bit different from most of the other units that I've been at, and in the meaning that they're a reserve force unit. This means that they have a regular full-time job somewhere else, and they come in once a week and 1 week a month to work with the unit. So it's kind of like going to school a week, and then once a week having dance lessons with a dance competition from Friday night until Sunday afternoon. A lot of dedication is required. The Queen's York Rangers can trace their history back all the way to 1773. They were officially recognized for their efforts 26 times in World War I. And some of these recognitions are for places like Vimy Ridge and Passchendaele, both of which have had their 100th anniversaries for this year. Hill 70 also celebrated its 100th anniversary as well. This is especially significant as this is the first time in Canada's history that there was a Canadian Corps led by a Canadian commander. So in World War I, Canada didn't actually make the decision to go to war. Britain told them that they had to go because we still weren't really a country. So this is why this is really important. So you may have already studied as to how Remembrance Day came to be and why it is an important day to veterans, but also to our great country. On the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, the armistice, which is kind of like an agreement, was signed between the Allied nations, Great Britain, which Canada was a part of back then, France and Russia, and their opponents, Germany and Austria. This armistice ended World War I. And most of you probably know why we wear poppies on Remembrance Day. Did you know that the UK, the US, New Zealand, and Australia also wear poppies? It is a symbol dating back to World War I and was adopted from the Canadian doctor Lieutenant Colonel John McCrae's infamous poem in Flanders Fields. Poppies grew on the soldiers' graves in Flanders, Belgium. Now you may think that this is a symbol of war from long ago, but it has grown also to represent the Korea War that Canadians fought bravely in the early 1950s, and the many peacekeeping missions in places like Syria and Bosnia, and of course the most recent conflict, Afghanistan. On my tour from September 2008 to April 2009, I was with the Operational Liaison Mentor team as one of their clerks. It was my job to ensure that everyone was receiving their tour money, ordering medals, and daily administration. One of the most important parts of my job, after making sure that everyone was paid properly, was ensuring the accurate completion of administrative forms, like emergency contact forms. These forms let soldiers identify who needed to be notified if they were injured or killed. Because we were going to Afghanistan, where it is not as safe as it is here in Canada, it was especially important that all of these forms had no mistakes on them. I worked out of the main base, Kandahar Airfield, or CAF as we like to call it for short. Most of our unit was scattered across Afghanistan or outside the water, at forward operating bases or patrol bases. Our unit was primarily responsible for training members of the Afghan National Army and Afghan National Police. We also worked very closely with American forces. We attended meetings at each other's camps and established close relationships with the people that we worked with. On December 5th, 2008, 3 guys from my unit were in an armored vehicle when they struck an improvised explosive device. They were killed instantly. All of them were just like you and I. Warrant Officer R.J. Wilson grew up in Keswick, Ontario, which is about an hour from here. Corporal Mark McLaren was from Peterborough, Ontario, about 2 hours away. And Private Demetrios Deparos was originally from Toronto. The person I'd like to focus on today is Warrant Officer Gaetan Roberge. He was a reserve member on a full-time contract with my unit in Afghanistan. He grew up in Sudbury, Ontario, and this is where he joined the 2nd Irish Regiment of Canada, which is also a reserve unit. His job was to teach fellow soldiers the necessary skills that they would need in places like Afghanistan. A few short weeks later, on December 27, 2008, he was killed when a bomb went off while he was doing security checks with another Canadian soldier that worked at a different unit, Sergeant Gregory Cruz. Also, an Afghan interpreter and Afghan National Police officer were killed. He was a very caring man for both his personal family and military family. He was also a devout Catholic. Frequently, he was found in prayer and invited anyone to join him. Warrant Roberge had gotten married 3 months before we left for our tour, and he carried a picture of his wife and 4 children in his wallet. They were all of school age. The memory that has stayed with me the most of Warrant Roberge is of our conversation prior to him going back outside the wire after being home approximately for 2 weeks to visit his family. I was going through a particularly rough time mentally, and he told me that I would get through it and everything would work out. Warrant Roberge always believed in the best of people. He died approximately 1 week after returning to Afghanistan from his leave for Canada. Prior to going back outside the wire, he was eager to get back to his team, which was his other family. To properly honor Warrant Roberge, all of us, including American, British, French, and German forces, lined the tarmac to the entrance of the aircraft that would take him back to Canada. We saluted his flag-draped coffin as 8 of my work family members carried it to the place that would bring him back to Canada and his final resting place in Sudbury, Ontario. It was then that it hit me that none of us would ever see Roberge's smiling face again. The last person I'd like to talk about is Sergeant Andrew Dornall, or Drew. You may have heard of him. He was an operator at the Canadian Special Operations Regiment. He was killed in Iraq on March 5th, 2015. He was there training Kurdish Peshmerga forces on how to fight Islamic extremists, and unfortunately during his return to an observation post at night, a Kurdish soldier mistook Drew and his team for enemy soldiers and opened fire. The rest of Drew's team were okay, but I'm sure that they will remember that day for the rest of their lives. My friends died with the hopes of sustaining peace in Canada and to bring peace around the world. They died in the hopes that future generations like yourselves would not have to. It is important to remember and to share their stories. Even though it is not always easy to share these stories, it would be far worse for the brave men and women that have gave their lives to be forgotten. All that I ask is that you remember them. Things like wearing a toppy on Remembrance Day and attending the Remembrance Day ceremony show your support of Canada's military and their families and the sacrifices that they have made. Once again, thank you for the invitation and the opportunity for sharing my experiences with you.
All right, it's good to be back here. I think this is year number 3 for me. So, before we started the presentation, Sergeant Rollins and I were talking with each other and saying how neither of us are very comfortable public speakers. And I think that for a lot of military personnel, there's a lot that they would rather be doing on Remembrance Day or on any sort of public speaking opportunity like this. It's very difficult to be here and to talk to a group. A lot of the time, we just don't want to talk about it. You go, you do your thing, and you come back, and you don't want to talk about it. When I came back from Afghanistan in 2009, I returned to my hometown for a little while. My hometown is really it's a couple hours up the road. I've been there, maybe I have a cottage up there. Really, it's not a military town. And so there were a lot of groups in Aurelia that wanted me to come and do, presentations and speeches and that kind of thing. And I did it for a little while, and I got increasingly uncomfortable at these presentations and speeches and that kind of thing. Do a dinner here or a meeting at a golf club there or something like that. And I realized that one that I didn't know what to say. I didn't know how to talk about it, and I was just really uncomfortable talking about it. And I stopped giving those presentations for a long time. You couldn't drag me out with horses and chains. I wouldn't do it. That discomfort hasn't gone away. It's still very much part of my life, and I think that's common of a lot of military people to this day. It's just, we tend to be a little bit understated, and we don't really like talking about it. It's a job, you do it, get on with things. But it's important to talk about it, because on days like Remembrance Day in particular, there's no human connection, I think, for a lot of people to understand what it is to be a member of the military, or why we think that remembrance is important. So I have a bunch of pieces of paper here that are the official presentation that they give us for days like today. I read it over breakfast. It talks a lot about Passchendaele and Vimy Ridge and World War II and all that stuff that's important, but is in some cases 100 years old. I'm not underscoring or undermining the presentation or the importance of those things, but they don't have a lot of the same immediacy, let's say, anymore, that they might have to our parents' generation or our grandparents' generation, right? It can be a little bit difficult to understand why something that has happened 100 years ago or 50 years ago, 75 years ago is important. So what I want to talk to you a little bit about while I'm here, I suppose, are my own personal reflections on Remembrance Day and conflict, and why people like Sergeant Rawlinson and myself, why we do what we do. I joined the Army in 2002 as a reservist, so part-time military. At the time, September 11th had happened, and Canada had a very small commitment in Afghanistan at the time. But there really wasn't any sense that there was a war, so to speak. We didn't. I kind of thought that joining the Army was fun. Spent the summer learning how to navigate in the woods at night, learning how to shoot machine guns and throw grenades and all kinds of cool stuff like that. And it was a really good way to help you pay for university. So, but there wasn't really a sense that any of this was quite for real, Over the next couple of years, I kept doing Army stuff part-time as the conflict in Afghanistan intensified and became a lot more immediate in the news. I think it was in 2005 or 2006 when the members of my reserve unit, the Queen's York Rangers, were told that if we wanted to go on a deployment, the time was now. We could volunteer and we would almost be guaranteed a spot on a tour of duty. So a number of us put up our hands and said, yeah, I'll go, sounds like fun. Because you kind of, how many here play sports? Right? Maybe you play soccer, you play baseball, whatever. It's one thing to practice all the time. It's another thing to get out and play the game. Now, that's not to say that going to a place like Afghanistan is playing a game. It's not at all. But the feeling is a little bit like, hey, I've been practicing this for a long time. Maybe it's time to get off the bench and see what it's like. So I think that was some of the mindset that I had at the time. I was 25 years old. I didn't really have a career. I wasn't married. I thought, all right, I'll volunteer. Didn't think anything of it. 6 months go by. I was working an Army job. I was teaching basic training. And I got a phone call from the chief clerk of the Queen's York Rangers. So that's Sergeant Rawlinson's job now. It wasn't Sergeant Rawlinson at the time. It was another person. She called me, said, hey, that spot you volunteered for on a tour, you got it. Oh, okay. All right, so I guess I got to put my money where my mouth is now and actually go through with this. So I said yes. That was summertime. I went up to the cottage with my folks, and I told them that night that I had volunteered for this and accepted the position. And you can imagine what my mother's response was. She cried a lot, for like days. So anyway, a couple months later, I got posted to Petawawa to start my workup training. I spent a year in and out of Petawawa. We went everywhere for our training for Afghanistan. So we went to Honduras in Central America for a month. We went to Texas for a month because Texas, there's a big American base in Texas that looked like desert, felt like desert, so it was a good place to train. We spent a good time out in Alberta, just training. So I was basically away from home for that year. Then we deployed, and I was away from home for the better part of the year. So by the time all was said and done, I was gone for essentially 2 years for this thing that I had volunteered for. I had stuck my hand up for and said, yeah, this sounds like a good idea. What could possibly go wrong? The day I flew into Afghanistan, who here has been on an airplane? Most people probably, right? You know, all visit family and friends. So we flew out of Ottawa. It was May 2007, or May 2008 rather. It was very cold. We all got on the plane in Ottawa. We got the big jet. We flew to Dubai in the Middle East. And from Dubai, we got onto an Air Force plane and flew into Afghanistan. Now, most of the time when you're on an airplane, you don't expect to see too many weapons. Nobody on an airplane is supposed to have weapons. That's why you go through those metal detectors when you go on the plane. But they gave us all rifles and ammunition and body armor with the idea being that if we got shot down on the way into Afghanistan, we'd at least have a fighting chance. If, survive the plane crash, if we didn't like it. However, the first couple of days in Afghanistan, everybody was jet lagged and trying to figure out where they were. It was very hot. It was like very hot, like being inside an oven. You step off the plane, everything smells weird, and it's very, very hot. And I just remember not having any idea where I was. But like Sergeant Rawlinson, I was on Kandahar Airfield, huge base, lots of amenities. You can go to the gym. You can go. They had a Subway and a Tim Hortons and stuff like that, so you could go get that. So the first day or so, I thought, all right, this isn't so bad. And then maybe the second or third night I was there, and I was coming out of the gym, and we got rocketed by the Taliban. So they would shoot rockets at our camp, and a lot of the time you wouldn't even hear them because the camp was so big. But this was one that I heard. I heard a whistle overhead, and it exploded a couple hundred meters away, and it was a huge loud bang with the car backing up. And then all the rocket attack sirens start going off. And I jumped onto the ground, and I remember hitting my chin on the gravel, because the ground was all gravel. And I cut my chin, and it hurt. And I thought, okay, this is for real. And I looked up, and there were some other soldiers, some American soldiers in one of the rocket shelters that we had, and they were laughing and smoking cigarettes, which nobody here should ever do. But, well, you can laugh, just don't smoke cigarettes. But I thought, well, I guess these guys have been here for a while because they don't look particularly bothered by it. So that was kind of my cue to pick myself up off the gravel and get the blood off my chin and carry on with my evening. I think for the duration of my time in Afghanistan, we had another maybe 200 or 300 rocket attacks after that. Like many things, you get used to them. Because the thing with the rocket attacks were, once they happened, they were over. Once you heard the bang or you heard the siren, that was it. It was over until the next day or a couple days after that. And then some days you'd go without them for days on end, maybe a week, and you'd wonder what was going on. It was getting quiet. I got to spend some time outside the wire. Outside the wire is a term that you probably heard Sergeant Rawlinson mention there. And that meant that you were off base. You were outside the wire. You were out in the conflict zone properly. So when you're on the base is surrounded by big walls, watchtowers, lots of protection. When you're outside the wire, it's a different story. That's where all the roadside bombings would happen, and you were very much at physical risk. You had to wear body armor at all times if you were outside the wire, and you had to be really aware of your situation. It was an interesting experience. The first time that I went, the night before I went, I didn't sleep 1 minute. I was so scared. That's the word for it. I was scared. I was very, very scared. I was awake all night. And then I went, and it actually wasn't so bad. It was, every time we hit a pothole in our big armored vehicle, I thought we were blowing up, but it was just a pothole because the roads in Afghanistan are a lot worse than Mississauga. Saying on. Anyway, so every time we hit a pothole, I thought we were blowing up, but we never hit a roadside bomb, thank God, and it was okay. But what would happen is we would be out on the road, and our convoy commander would have a funny feeling about a certain spot, right? Say, okay, well last week there were 3 bombings right there, or there was an ambush here, or this or that. So we're going to get everybody out of the vehicle, and we're going to search the area, and if it's safe, we're all going to get back in the vehicle and carry on. So the first time that we did one of those, I will never forget the sound of the ramp at the back of our vehicle coming down, and then it was like getting off the bench to go up to bat or to get in the game for the first time. It's like, this is real. I've got my rifle. I've got my body armor. I know that this is very dangerous, or maybe it's not, but you can't tell. You don't know. And it's hot. It's dusty. It's dirty. There's all sorts of unfamiliar buildings, and just you're never so aware that you're so far away from home as you are when you're doing a patrol of a danger area, wondering if there's going to be a bomb under that bit of garbage, or if you could be shot. Fortunately, I never found a bomb, and I was never shot at in those situations. But I can tell you, for those half an hour that it took to do road patrol, or to do this or to do that, I wasn't too worried about who was texting me, or what movie I was going to see on the weekend, or not that we had weekends, we didn't. Every day was Monday in Afghanistan. But for those 30 minutes, I was not worried about anything except for what was directly in front of me. So it was an interesting feeling in that regard. So the overwhelming feeling that I had most of the time that I was doing that was that I had volunteered to be there, and nobody had forced me to do it. I had put myself in that situation. And you know what? At the end of the day, I was kind of proud of it, because I volunteered to do it, and I was proud to be a part of that, and a very small part of that. There were several thousand Canadians that went through Afghanistan over the time that we were there. I was one of many. I was a very small piece in it, but I was proud of it. Just a couple more things. When I came home, I took a job with a big base in the north part of Toronto that coordinated all sorts of military activities across the province and across Canada. One thing that we did there, so every time a Canadian was killed in Afghanistan, their body would come home to a place called Trenton, which is a couple hours east of Toronto, because there's a big Air Force base there. So the body would land in Trenton and be transported down Highway 401. You've probably heard the term Highway of Heroes, and that refers to that stretch of highway from Trenton to Toronto, where our fallen soldiers or sailors or air people would come to Toronto before they would be transported elsewhere, where their final resting place might be it Sudbury, in the case of Burge, or as far away as Vancouver or a place like that. So that time period from 2009 to 2011 was a very busy time, and sadly there were a great many fallen soldiers during that time. So it was a very busy job. And one thing that we had to do in that job was ensure that nobody knew before the families knew. So there was a lot of interest from the newspaper and the press and that kind of thing, the media. But our job was to be very strict about making sure that that our specialized teams would go out and let someone's mother or wife or husband or whomever be the first person to know before they're seeing it on the news. So if you lose a loved one in a conflict zone, you're not learning first about it from Facebook or TV or whatever. You're getting a proper notification team that comes to your house and gives you that very devastating news. So that was a difficult job, and a lot of stress with that. So I have completely strayed from the paper they gave me, but what I hope that I have done is give you a sense of very small amount of personal stories that go into Remembrance Day, and the kinds of things that I like to think about on Remembrance Day. I do like to take a moment, of course, to remember things that are very important historically, but are removed from us now by 100 years or 75 years or whatever, and think about the more immediate things that I can put a personal face on, like that feeling of getting off the airplane for the first time, or being part of the mechanisms that would let a family know that their loved one wasn't going to be coming home. So that's what Remembrance Day is to me, and that's what I think about when I take that moment of silence on the 11th, and that's why that's what I think about when I put the poppy on. And that's the kind of thing that I hope you'll reflect on, that the 100-year-old stuff is extremely important, but there's also more immediate touchstones that you can reach out and understand. And although people like Sergeant Rawlinson and myself don't like talking about it, and today is no exception. I'm very happy to be here, don't get me wrong, but we never quite are comfortable talking about it. That's what it's all about. So there you go. And the best part of these presentations is now the questions that everybody here hopefully has. So I will stop talking. Thank you.
So does anyone have any questions, any concerns, any comments?
Go ahead.
What conflicts do Canadian forces find themselves in nowadays?
So Afghanistan, our commitment in Afghanistan is over, but we still have personnel deployed all over the place. Who here has family from Eastern Europe? Right. Ukraine, Poland, Lithuania, that kind of place. So Canada has service personnel deployed to Eastern Europe to help with NATO stabilization operations. To speak frankly, against Russian expansion. So it's not a conflict in the sense of bullets flying or anything like that. It's more about working with allies in those countries in Eastern Europe to train and develop them to have the capacity to protect their sovereignty. We also have personnel in Iraq right now, mainly mentoring the Iraqi and Kurdish forces to fight ISIS. One of my best friends, actually, he's in Kuwait right now in a big multinational headquarters, helping with that mission. So at any given time, there are Canadian military personnel all over the world. They're stabilization operations and humanitarian relief operations in the Caribbean, in places like Jerusalem. There's always something going on, and we've got folks all over the place. Not large numbers, but ones and twos and tens and that kind of thing. Anybody else? Yes. Would he still be able to? Yes. If you are a member of the Canadian Armed Forces, you have, yes, that there is always that potential, even for military personnel here in Canada. As you may remember from 3 years ago now, there were 2 Canadian soldiers killed in Canada close to Remembrance Day. They're both murdered as acts of terrorism. So it's possible. So I don't want to give you the false impression that members of the military are always safe just because we're in Canada. The likelihood is not very high of that kind of event, but it is there. And a lot of the training that we do as well can be dangerous, and there are injuries, and sometimes, unfortunately, people lose their lives in training accidents too. So, yeah. So I don't want to give you an answer that's inaccurate or unfair. But I wish your brother the best of luck, and I don't want to give him the idea that it's not a good job, because it's a very good job, very rewarding. Yes. Yeah.
When you say you go training, like what type of training? What do you do?
Take this one.
So it depends on your trade. So for me, the training can range anywhere from different types of paperwork, but also doing, of course, like winter warfare, like you go out and learn how to build an igloo and how to survive outside in winter for a couple of days. It can also mean that you're learning how to drive a tank or shoot weapons, just about anything.
Yes.
What do you like most about your job? Being
I would say probably helping people, for sure.
Yeah, I would say the same, and the friendships I've developed. Yeah. Yeah.
if you're needed somewhere to like fight, and like they don't have anyone else to do it, do you have to go? Like if you're 100% needed?
That's a question with a few different answers. You go first.
Okay, so basically the government of Canada, they decide, like in the case of Afghanistan, they decide, okay, we want to send people there. So the full-time people, they don't really have a choice. Normally they do get people that want to go. And if the government has said that we're going there, we're going there. With the reserves, they have the option of signing up to go for positions.
Yeah, so as in my case, I volunteered to go because yeah. So it depends on the severity of the conflict, whether or not our government has options to send people in more and more numbers, depending on the severity of what's happening. So I know that's not crystal clear, but I suppose the simple answer to your question is yes and no, which is not crystal clear. But there you go. How about, yeah, go ahead.
What is the age you can join the military?
Right. Did you hear that?
Sorry, so it's 16 for the reserves, which is the part-time, and 18 for the regular force, which is full-time.
Yes, with it. Nice and loud, please. Right.
For me, I was looking for something challenging, and I originally joined part-time just to see if I liked it and see what it was all about, and I was really, really lucky and found a job that I absolutely loved, so that's why I went full-time.
Yeah, I'd say it was pretty well exactly the same for me. Yeah, just a challenge and a job that that wasn't it wouldn't be like other jobs. Yeah, go ahead.
This isn't really a question, but my great grandfather, he was like in the war in the Poland, so he was helping Poland, and he died when my grandmother was 2 months old.
Thanks for sharing. That's good stuff. Let's go fourth row, checkered shirt. It depends on a few different things. So if you're hurt not too badly and you can keep on, then you're not going to get replaced. But if you're hurt quite badly, then there are replacement mechanisms you propose.
So on my tour, there were a few people that were hurt, and at least one of them had to come back to Canada, and there was a replacement person that came over, and they had to kind of get used to how we did things and everything. But yes, there are replacements.
We'll take one more question.
This one here is the General Campaign Star, which is the medal everyone would have received that went over to Afghanistan, and there's a rotation bar. So this tells you how many days someone's been over in Afghanistan. Was there a specific thing that you were curious about? These ones? Or these ones?
Oh, okay. So I've got the same campaign star as Sergeant Rawlinson does, with the rotation bar on it. And I've got the Canadian decoration, which you get after 12 years of service. Okay.
Thank you, Sergeant Rawlinson and Major Lennox, for sharing your experiences with us. As a token of appreciation and gratitude for your service, please accept this small gift on behalf of our entire school community.
On November 11th every year, people all over the world take time out of their busy lives to remember the brave and courageous heroes who devoted their lives to helping our country grow as a whole. The war has forever impacted the way the rest of the world views Canadians and Canada as a whole. During the month of November, Canadians across the country wear a poppy with pride as a symbol of remembrance. Despite the turmoil and strife, poppies were able to bloom and flourish on the battlefield. It gained popularity after John McCrae wrote and published his now famous poem In Flinders Fields. John McCrae was a doctor from Guelph, Ontario. He spent most of his time during World War I working in a field hospital. It was while tending to the wounded that Dr. McCrae wrote his now famous poem. This year, we're lucky to have Mr. Martino's Drama Class perform for us in front of Tableau.
In Flanders fields, the poppies blow.
Between the crosses, row by row,
That mark our place, and in the sky,
the larks still bravely singing fly.
scarce heard in the Dickens glow.
We are the dead,
Short days ago, we lived, felt dawn, saw sunset glow.
loved and were loved, and now we lie in Flanders fields. Take up our quarrel with the foe.
To you, our falling hands we throw.
The torch be yours to hold it high.
If ye break faith with us who die,
We shall not sleep, though poppies grow.
in Flanders.
From July 1914 to November 11, 1918, men and women across Canada traveled overseas to make contributions to the war. Despite the fact Canada's Confederation took place in 1867, it wasn't until 1917, at the Battle of Vimy Ridge, that we started being seen as a reliable yet independent country. In our front foyer, we are honored to have a pair of combat boots that was one of the many thousands of pairs that surrounded the monument of Vimy Ridge this past spring. Canadian soldiers who lost their lives during the battle were represented by the boots.
We remain appreciative to all those who participated in all wars and those who continue to serve our country. In honor of these brave souls, we have created a memorial video to reflect on. Please turn your attention to the screen as we will now take part in a moment of silence. the men and women who serve and have served our country, we have put together a mashup of two songs that we feel convey our gratitude and appreciation for them.
These two songs remind us to stand together and never forget all that has been done for us to live in a free and peaceful country. Please listen and reflect on the words. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today to remember those who gave their lives, as well as those who have served and continue to serve their country, including Major Lennox, Sergeant Rawlinson, and Mr. Watson, who served in the British military before joining us at HNMCS. As the final part of our Remembrance Day service, we ask that everyone make their way to their tap room. Thank you.